By their very nature, projects must be completed. I'm sure you're aware of this. In their definitions of what the project is, the two authorities made this clear. A project is a temporary undertaking that aims to provide a one-of-a-kind product, service, or outcome. The important word in that definition is temporary, which means it must have a beginning and an end. This time frame is referred to as project closure. During a project closure is often forgotten. Many people believe that successful project delivery is characterized by completing deliverables on time and within budget. Many practitioners regard project closure as an overburdening, a procedure with limited significance and scope that is solely carried out to meet organizational needs. Many practitioners, however, are unaware that the closing a project process is just as important and powerful as the initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control processes. Both the project and the organization can benefit greatly from the project ending process. So, today let us discuss project closure. Hello everyone. This is George from Invensis Learning. Welcome to our YouTube channel. In today's session, we are going to have a brief on closing a project. So, without any further delay, let's get started. Firstly, we will discuss the main topic, which is what is closing a project? Next, we shall discuss the importance of project closure. Next, we shall find the reason on how do you know when the project is done. Soon after this, we will discuss project closing process by discussing processes involved in the integration management. After that, we shall see the stages of project closure and end the session by discussing the best practices for project closure. I hope the plan is clear to you guys. We will now begin the presentation and talk about what is closing a project. Every project has a beginning and an end date, which has been established. Closing a project is the process of completing the project's work and bringing it to a close. That's all there is to it. So if you aren't finishing or ending an exercise, you should be aware that the exercise isn't a project. According to Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK Guide, the project closing process group consists of those processes performed to conclude all activities across all project management process groups to complete the project, phase, or contractual obligations formally. When completed, this process group confirms that the stated processes are performed within all process groups to close the project or phase, as appropriate, and formally establishes that the project or project phase is complete. This process group checks that the prescribed processes are completed within all of the process groups to conclude the project, when applicable, and formally establishes that the project or phase is complete when it is completed. It could be a surgical procedure. One of the distinctions between a project and an operation is that projects are one-time events, but operations are ongoing and continual. An endeavor, no matter how long it lasts, must come to an end. The project is formally ended with the team and agreed with the project sponsor or client during the closing phase. While delivering the solution to the end users, the actions carried out during this phase guarantee that no aspects of the project or associated procedures are missed. Contracts with external suppliers are finalized, and project resources are released to work on other projects. In other words, project closing is the application of the following to a project: assurance that all work has been done, assurance that all agreed upon project management protocols have been followed, and formal recognition of the project's completion by everyone. As you guys have got an idea about the term closing a project, we shall now discuss the importance of closing a project. If a project isn't closed properly, the project management team and their time, effort, and credibility may be tarnished for reasons that aren't their fault or responsibility. As a result, project closing, like the initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and controlling processes, serves an important purpose for the organization by preventing undesirable and adverse circumstances. The closing phase of the project management lifecycle's goal is to confirm that all project deliverables have been completed to the project sponsor's satisfaction and to communicate the project's final disposition and status to all participants and stakeholders. In addition, project closure guarantees that all project participants and stakeholders know the next steps and have enough time to communicate and coordinate with other projects and production service providers. Closing efforts should also include identifying and documenting lessons learned and best practices and archiving these organizational process assets, OPAs, in ServiceNow for future reference. Recording project papers, archiving in organizational process assets, making final payments, releasing resources, and concluding the project are all part of the closure processes. Whether it is a success or a disaster, every initiative teaches the organization something. As a result, even after a project is over, The documentation created during that project will be useful in completing future initiatives. Consider the following closing process group activities for successful project closure. Let's go over each one individually now. The first importance is, helps to provide dedicated support and resources. The closing process ensures that the right support and resources are identified and provided to the client after completing the project. Next, we have confirmation of the goals being satisfied. After each interaction, we must ask ourselves, did we achieve what we set out to do? After all, your customer engaged you to assist them in achieving specific organizational goals, whether it was a new social intranet or an externally facing website that their staff could update. In addition, obtaining a project or WAT, user acceptance testing, sign-off from your customer as part of the closure process confirms that you and your team have completed the project objectives and met the agreed-upon requirements. Then, avoid iterations in future projects. The observations and findings during a project give enough experience to avoid errors or iterations in future projects. Next, capturing the knowledge. Identifying project assets including documents or code can be reused in future engagements as part of the lessons learned sessions. At the end of the meeting, assign someone to do just that, so it isn't forgotten when the following engagement begins. Create a knowledge base where the internal team and the client may view all project papers in the future. You don't want to lose any of the project's important assets or reusable components. This is how you improve the efficiency of your engagements over time. Coming to the next importance, we have allot experts to own and maintain the solution. Along with delivering the project to the client, it is very important to allot the necessary individuals to help the client own and maintain the solution after project completion. Next, sense of accomplishment and closure. Certifying that objectives have been completed to the client's satisfaction provides a sense of accomplishment and closure to the client and the project team. It provides the client the impression that you and your firm are serious about assisting them in achieving their goals and that you will follow through on what you promised. It's a massive no-no to skip this step. It's like when your hairdresser gives you a fresh cut but doesn't show you the mirror at the end to make sure you like it. Next in the list, we have avoid incomplete tasks and deliverables. A formal procedure is followed to close a project ensures that any minor or major incomplete tasks and deliverables are completed without fail. Last, in the list, we have tightening loose ends. Numerous administrative chores must be completed after a project to be properly concluded from a back-office standpoint. For example, sending the final status report, requesting final payment, approving all timesheets, and reassigning personnel should all be part of the closure process to complete them on time. Now as the importance of closing a project is clear to you, let us discuss. How do you know when the project is done? Depending on the project, the customer, and potentially any stipulations agreed to upon kickoff. As a result, we may not know when we're done with the project. However, the response is critical because the sponsor has typically committed substantial resources that include money, personnel, and time to achieve a goal. As a result, the sponsor has every reason to expect a positive response. So, to figure out when a project is finished, think about your current project or program and, if this question fills you with worry, terror, or simply makes you feel uneasy, consider the following. There is no ideal correct solution because any of these might be followed, and something could have slipped through the cracks. Depending on the project, the customer, and potentially any stipulations agreed to upon kickoff. We may not know when we're done with the project. A project's goal is to accomplish a specific result. The scope will assist in defining the outcome, and ensuring that the scope and outcomes are explicit, documented, agreed upon, and tracked will aid in ensuring that they are met. We can certainly make the project closure process very strict and structured, and that's perfectly acceptable. However, it's usually a good idea to have a decent project checklist. This is how a project can come to a close. Now, we shall come to our next topic, that is, project closure process. The process of completing all activities for a project, phase, or contract is known as closing the project or phase. The project or phase information is archived, the intended work is done, and organizational team resources are released to explore new projects due to this process. This procedure is carried out only once or at predetermined intervals during the project. Closing a project is more than just completing deliverables when it comes to project management. A formal closing phase guarantees that all loose ends are tied up, documentation is signed and authorized, contractors are paid, and everyone is on the same page, even if the process appears laborious or unduly administrative. The closing phase also allows you to assess and analyze the project's success or failure, essential for future planning and execution of successful initiatives. The project closure process involves close project or phase that is present in the knowledge area integration management. This process has certain inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs. Let us now discuss each of them in detail and understand them better. Coming to the inputs, we have. The first input is Project Charter. The project charter lays out the success criteria for the project, as well as the approval processes and who will sign off on it. Next, we have Project Management Plan. This method takes into account all aspects of the project management plan. The next input is Project Documents. Project documents include Assumption Log. The assumption log contains all of the assumptions and constraints that influence the project's technical needs, estimates, timeframe, dangers, and other factors. Based on estimates, actual outcomes are compared to estimations of durations, cost, resources, and cost management using the basis of estimates. Changes Log. The change log keeps track of the status of all change requests throughout the project or phase. Issue Log. The issue log is used to verify that no issues remain unresolved. Lessons Learned Register. The lessons learned in the phase or project will be finalized before being placed in the Lessons Learned repository. Milestone List. The milestone list showed when each of the project's milestones was completed. Project Communications. Project communications comprise any communications that occur during the project. Quality Control Measurements. The outcomes of control. The quality control measures, which demonstrate conformity with the quality criteria, document the quality processes. Quality Reports. Quality reports may include a summary of results from the control quality process, as well as all quality assurance concerns addressed or escalated by the team, recommendations for improvement, and a summary of findings from the control quality process. Requirements Documentation. Documentation of requirements is used to demonstrate that the project scope is being followed. Risk Register. The risk register is used to keep track of any hazards that develop during the project. Risk Report. The risk report comprises information about the risk status and guarantees that there are no open risks at the end of the project. Next. Accepted Deliverables. Acceptable deliverables include approved product specifications, delivery receipts, and job performance papers. Partial or interim deliverables may be supplied for phased or discontinued projects. Next in the input list, we have Business Documents. Business documents include Business Case. The business case outlines the project's business requirement as well as the cost-benefit analysis. Benefits Management Plan. The project's goal benefits are outlined in the Benefits Management Plan. Then, Agreements. The contract terms and conditions and procurement management strategy usually set the stage for official procurement closure. In a difficult project, many contracts may be managed simultaneously or sequentially. Procurement Documentation. To close the contract, all procurement documentation is gathered, indexed, and filed. The contract timeframe, scope, quality, and cost performance are cataloged, including all contract amendment documents, payment records, and inspection findings. As-built plans/drawings, as-developed papers, manuals, troubleshooting, and other technical paperwork should all be considered part of the procurement documents when it comes to completing a project. Last, in the input list, we have Organizational Process Assets. These pointers are included in the Organizational Process Assets. For a project or phase's closure rules or requirements, the Configuration Management Knowledge Base stores versions and baselines of all official business standards, policies, processes, and project documents. Coming to the tools and techniques we have. Expert Judgment. Expertise should be considered from people with specialized knowledge and expertise in the following words: Management Control, Audit, Legal and Procurement, and Legislation and Regulations. The next tool is Data Analysis. Data analysis techniques include Document Analysis. Examining available documentation will allow for the identification of lessons learned and knowledge exchange for future efforts as well as the improvement of organizational assets. Registration Analysis. Regression analysis explores the interrelationships between numerous project factors that influence project results to improve project performance in the future. Trend Analysis. Trend analysis can be used to evaluate the organization's models as well as create adjustments for future projects. Variance Analysis. variance analysis can improve an organization's metrics by comparing what was originally expected to the actual outcome. And the last in the list is meetings. Meetings are held to certify that deliverables have been accepted, check that exit conditions have been met, document contract completion, assess stakeholder satisfaction, gather lessons learned, communicate project knowledge and information, and celebrate achievement. Attendance is open to project team members and any stakeholders participating with or affected by the project. Meetings can be face-to-face, virtual, formal, or informal. Meeting kinds include closeout reporting meetings, customer wrap-up meetings, lessons learned at meetings, celebratory meetings. Now, coming to the outputs, we have project documents updates. Following the completion of a project, all project documentation may be changed and designated as final versions. The lessons learned register, updated to include end phase or project information, is particularly important. The final lessons learned might include benefits management, business case accuracy, project and development life cycles, risk and problem management, stakeholder involvement, and other project management activities. Next, we have final product, service, or result transition. The project may be given over to another group or organization to manage, operate, and support it throughout its life cycle once it has produced a product, service, or result. This output refers to the transfer of the final product, service, or result that the project could produce from one team to another. Next, final report. The final report provides a summary of the project's performance. It contains information such as a summary of the project or phase at a high level, scope objectives, evaluation criteria, and confirmation that the completion requirements were met are all included. Quality objectives, project and product quality evaluation standards, verification and actual milestone delivery dates, and reasons for changes are all included in the quality objectives. The cost objectives include the acceptable cost range, actual costs, and justifications for any changes. This section summarizes the validation information for the final product, service, or outcome. Schedule objectives, such as determining whether the project's outputs match the aims for which it was formed. If the advantages are not realized at the end of the project, state to what extent they were realized and give a forecast for future benefit realization. A summary of how the final product, service, or result meets the company's goals outlined in the business plan. If the business needs are not met by the end of the project, describe how far they were met and when they will be met in the future. A list of any dangers or issues that surfaced during the project, along with how they were addressed. Last in the list we have organizational process asset updates. Organizational process assets include project documents. Project papers include documents such as the project management plan, scope, cost, timeline, and project calendars, as well as change management documentation. Operational and support documents, documents required by a company to maintain, operate, and support a project's product or service. They may be brand new documents or updates to existing ones. Project or phase closure documents. Closure documentation for projects or phases contain official paperwork showing project or phase completion and the transfer of completed project or phase deliverables to others, such as an operations group or the next phase. Lessons learned repository. Throughout the project, lessons acquired and skills gained are preserved in a lessons learned repository for future projects to use. Now that you guys have got a clear idea of the project closure process, we shall see the stages involved in project closure. The project close is the ultimate phase of your task. It's the final step in the project life cycle, and it, like all other aspects of a project, necessitates a process. To guarantee that your project is done successfully, go over the following checklist. The first stage is perform a team review. Managing a project isn't only about tasks and resources, budgets, and deadlines, it's also a learning experience. While you should have been learning throughout the project, now is a fantastic moment to take a step back and reflect without the pressure and distractions that may have distracted you. As a result, one of the most important processes in the project closure process is a project review. This is the moment to reflect on the project's accomplishments, shortcomings, obstacles, and ideas for improvement in the future. As you begin your postmortem, that is a project review. Gather the core team to invite feedback about what worked and what didn't. Encourage people to be truthful. You're creating a database of historical data by chronicling the project's faults and accomplishments. When planning new initiatives, you can go back and review the information for precedents. Finally, conduct a project performance evaluation. In other words, determine the project's cost, timetable, and quality performance. Then, to receive feedback on how the project went, conduct a survey or organize a meeting with the project management team. These individual responses will aid in the creation of a more comprehensive picture of the project's success. You can then highlight lessons learned and prospects based on the project's performance and feedback. It's important to remember that the purpose of this phase isn't to assign blame for any errors. Instead, it's a chance for everyone to learn and better on future projects. With the performance assessment, feedback, and improvement plan, you should document your project review. Projects are never isolated events, they are part of a larger continuum in which the particular may change, but the overall methods are usually the same. Thus, after a project is completed, there is a plethora of knowledge created. The second stage is complete paperwork. As previously said, projects generate a large number of documents. Stakeholders will have to sign off on these documents and give their approval. Everything requires attention and must be signed for, as this serves as legal confirmation that the forms have been completed. This includes terminating any contracts you may have entered into with internal partners, vendors, or other resources. This involves taking care of any unpaid bills. First, you'll want to double-check that all bills, commissions, fees, bonuses, and other expenses have been paid. Then, fill in the blanks with all of the project's costs. If it isn't paid for, it isn't done. The next stage is release resources. You've put together a team for the project, and now it's time to let them go. It's a formal and necessary procedure that allows them to go on to the next project. Each team is assembled to provide a unique set of talents and experience to a project. The project will dictate which team members you'll want to work with, and each project will be unique, which will be reflected in the team assembled to carry it out. In writing, release all project resources, including suppliers, contractors, team members, and any other partners. Notify them of the project's completion, confirm any final payments or commitments, and release them formally to work on other projects. This applies to both internal and external resources. The external ones may be more visible because you signed a contract with them, which will be for a set time. So when it's done, double-check that everyone has been paid in full so they can sign off and go. On the other hand, internal resources stay, and you must remember that their time on the project is finite and that if you do not release your resources once the project is over, you may be obstructing the work of other teams. Next in the list, we have archived documents. There are lessons to be gained from previous initiatives, which is why you should meet with your team frequently throughout the project, and reflect on it afterward. However, if you don't have an archive to retrieve previous information, any knowledge you learn will be lost due to inadequate administration and organization. Don't throw away all of your hard work in creating excellent project documentation. After you've finished your project post-mortem, you can finalize all documentation, contracts, project plans, scope outline, timetable, and so on, and file it away in the corporate archives for future reference. Before you conclude a project, make a backup of all papers, notes, and data that might be relevant later. Even if you never look at it, it's important to retain a paper trail of every project's work for other individuals in the company. This might involve legal, HR, or even your successors' teams. You never know when someone will need to go back and answer a question or learn how an old problem was resolved. Consider it similar to storing food for the winter. The last stage is celebrate the success. Last but not least, remember to rejoice. The completion of a project is a significant achievement that marks the culmination of a team's hard work and dedication over many hours. It brings the project to a close, which is the goal of this section, but it also plants a seed that will grow in future projects when you work with members of the old team. An end-of-project celebration is a terrific opportunity to recognize your team's efforts and boost morale. A happy team is also more inclined to collaborate with you in the future, allowing you to build on your previous triumphs and become a more effective unit in the future. Once the paperwork is filed and the reviews are over, kick back and take time to celebrate the successful close together you've earned. As you guys saw the project closure stages, let us now look at the best practices for closing a project. Closing a project is more than just completing deliverables when it comes to project management. A formal closing phase guarantees that all loose ends are tied up, documentation is signed and authorized, contractors are paid, and everyone is on the same page, even if the process appears laborious or unduly administrative. The closing phase also allows you to assess and analyze the project's success, or failure, which is essential for future planning and execution of successful initiatives. So, it is better to know the best practices of project closure. Thus, let's talk about project termination best practices now. Firstly, we have project deliverables transfer. Handing off promised items and related documentation and providing agreed upon services like demos, training, and so on are examples of project deliverables. You want to ensure that the client is satisfied with all project management phases, including the result, and this necessitates that you fulfill all contractual obligations. Depending on milestones and contract requirements, deliverables may be transferred at any point during the project's life cycle. However, before ultimate closure, you must provide all the client requirements to continue using your promised product. Next, we have contracts are completed. Getting everyone involved to sign off on contract completion is perhaps the most critical component of the project management closure phase. This means that everyone involved agrees that all work has been completed, all invoices have been paid, all objectives have been reached, and each party is satisfied with the contract's completion. If contracts aren't finished and signed off on, it could lead to later lawsuits, possibly from clients who say they weren't satisfied or didn't receive all they were promised. As a result, a project is not complete until this vital step is completed. Then we have analysis and archiving of projects. Client input may or may not be required during this phase of project management closing. Analysis entails going over each project management phase again to see how things went, what went well, and what went wrong. This aids project managers and teams in streamlining procedures, reducing waste, learning from mistakes, and improving performance over time. You can also solicit input from clients on the project as a whole or specific issue. Then, if the project needs to be revisited at a later date, you should collect all documentation logically, name it correctly, provide a quick overview of contents, and archive it. Next, resources are being reprioritized. It's time to redeploy your resources after you've completed the closure phase. To put it another way, you need to reassign team members to new projects. This could entail reassigning personnel to existing projects or reorganizing a whole team to begin a new project. In either case, you want to ensure that staff isn't left hanging once a project is finished, and Clarisen's project management solutions give you the visibility and integration you need to repurpose resources smoothly. The last in the list is review all contract documentation. This step is also called post-mortem and includes conducting a performance review and evaluating the quality of work based on time and resources involved. After receiving the acknowledgement and necessary sign-offs, all the project documentation must be reviewed and ensure no pending work is left out. Closing a project is an excellent way to better future projects, contribute to organizational growth, and advance your project management career. The phase also guarantees that the team is given the credit it deserves. To know more about this, you can enroll in our project management professional course. Read the description box to learn more regarding the same. Also, if you have any doubts, please drop them in the below comment section. Thank you.